The moment Madison's boyfriend walked into my office, his eyes widened. He froze, then whispered, "Hi, boss." That's when my entire family realized the daughter they tried to hide was the one running the company. I'm Evelyn Carter, and this isn't a story about revenge. It's about the day I stopped fixing what was never mine to heal. Tell me, have you ever been erased by your own family? I want to share what happened. I'm Evelyn, and this is my story. My name's Evelyn Carter. I'm 33 years old, and if you ask anyone from the outside looking in, I have a good life, maybe even a great one. I live in a clean one-bedroom loft just south of downtown Seattle. Mornings begin the same way, double espresso from my well-worn Breville Jazz, humming low from the speaker in the corner, and the smell of rain washing down the glass. I walk to the office. It's only 8 blocks, but enough to clear my head before the day begins. I co-founded a healthcare AI startup called Neuralwave. We build predictive tools that help doctors detect conditions like early-stage heart failure, the kind of tech that saves lives and earns respect, at least professionally, but not at home, not where it matters most. At home, I'm not Evelyn Carter co-founder. I'm just Evelyn, the other daughter. The weird one. The too serious, too busy, too intense one. The one who never quite knew how to say the right thing at dinner. The one who skipped the matching Christmas pajamas. The one who always looked tired even when I wasn't. Madison, on the other hand, she's perfect. Graceful, gentle, patient. A second-grade teacher in Spokane who bakes on weekends and still writes thank you notes by hand. My mother's voice softens when she says her name. My father, he just beams. And who could blame them? Madison is, well, exactly who you'd want your daughter to be. A school teacher with a sunny laugh and a golden retriever named Tucker. She drives a white Subaru and wears soft cardigans in earth tones. No one ever finds Madison too much. She's never been hard to follow. Me. They used to say I was born curious, always asking questions, pulling things apart, putting them back together. But curiosity becomes criticism in the wrong room. By the time I hit 14, my mom had already stopped trying to understand what I did on the computer. And by college, I had officially become the daughter who's into tech stuff. That's what they'd say at barbecues. Madison teaches second grade. She's incredible with kids. And Evelyn, oh, she's in Seattle doing some computer startup thing. She's always been more of a private type. I always knew what that meant. Different, cold, a little too sharp around the edges. Even in family photos, I looked like a glitch on a perfect screen, standing stiff hands clasped while Madison leaned into Mom's shoulder like a Hallmark card come to life. I remember one Thanksgiving, I flew in straight from a funding pitch, still in heels running on 4 hours of sleep. I walked into the kitchen hoping for coffee, maybe a hug. Instead, my father glanced up from carving the turkey and said, "Did you remember to bring pie?" Like I was the caterer, not the daughter they hadn't seen in 6 months. I brought pecan. They didn't touch it. The truth is, I stopped bringing expectations home a long time ago. I stopped hoping they'd ask about the company when they never even learned its name. I stopped waiting for someone to say, "We're proud of you." And still, every time I stood behind Madison at another birthday party or Christmas gathering, I felt that little ache, like maybe, just maybe, if I could explain it right, if I could simplify what I do, or laugh softer, or wear a warmer shade of lipstick, they'd finally see me. But that's not how family works. At least not mine. My best friend Jenna, she's the only one who ever calls it what it is. "You were raised in the house of unspoken expectations," she said once. "Your job was to never outshine the golden child, and you failed." She laughed when she said it, but I didn't. Because she was right. There are people who grow up in homes full of love, even if it's messy. Then, there are people like me, raised with politeness, routine, and just enough affection to make you doubt yourself when it's missing. The morning this all started, the beginning of the unraveling, it felt just like any other. Rain tapped gently against the windows. I took the first sip of espresso. The taste was rich, almost bitter, like the thoughts I hadn't yet allowed myself to say out loud. This year, I thought, I'll go home early for Mom's birthday, Not because I expected anything different, but because deep down, I still wanted to show up. Still wanted to help. Still wanted, if I'm being honest, to matter. I didn't know then that one phone call would be the crack, and that everything after would be the break. The email came in at 7:03 a.m. subject line, Mom's birthday dinner, Saturday at 5 inches. It was from Madison, of course, bright, cheerful, full of exclamation points. She'd even attached a photo of the restaurant's menu like she was hosting some cozy little evening with old friends instead of orchestrating the annual parade of perfection. I read it once, then again. The date circled in my mind, March 18th, a Saturday. I hadn't seen my parents in almost a year. I hadn't seen Madison in longer. And still, I was planning to go. Not because I thought this time would be different, but because despite everything, despite the hollow phone calls, the uneven conversations, the one-sided effort part of me still showed up when it mattered. I always did. I booked the flight before lunch. I'd land Friday night, rent a car, and spend Saturday morning helping Mom prep like I used to. It didn't matter that I'd just closed a major investor round or that my CTO was practically begging me to rest. I was going to Spokane because birthdays meant something to me even when they didn't mean me. Later that evening, as I walked through Trader Joe's, half focused on picking out flowers to send ahead of my visit, I decided to call home. The phone rang 4 times before someone answered. "Hello, Dad." His voice was steady, maybe too steady. I smiled instinctively. "Hey, it's Evelyn." Pause. "Hey," he said. "No warmth, no curiosity. I wanted to let you know I'm flying in Friday. I thought I'd come early and help with the dinner. If Mom wants anything specific, I can grab it on the way." Silence. Just silence. I held the phone closer to my ear, thinking the call had dropped. Then a small cough, a clearing of the throat. Then his words soft but sharp. "Evelyn, maybe it's best if you skip this year." I froze. "I'm sorry I asked," though I'd heard him clearly, every syllable clipped and deliberate. He sighed. "It's just... Madison's bringing someone. Her new boyfriend, Nathan. He's a regional finance director, very polished, very professional. We don't want things to feel uncomfortable. Uncomfortable." My grip on the cart tightened. I looked down and realized I'd been crushing the bouquet in my hand. Tiny purple asters bent beneath my fingers. "Are you saying my being there would be uncomfortable?" No, it's not like that," he said quickly. "It's just, you know how things can get. You're busy. Your work is hard to explain. Nathan is very business-minded. We don't want you to feel out of place." I nearly laughed, not out loud, not really. Just the kind of half-scoff that lives in your throat when something finally snaps. I'm not some alien dad. "I don't speak in code." "Evelyn," he said gently, "don't make this harder than it has to be." I blinked, staring at the jar of peanut butter in front of me like it held the answers to this madness. "You're asking me not to come to my mother's birthday? Because my presence might make Madison's boyfriend feel awkward." He hesitated, that split-second pause that always means yes, just without the guts to say it. I think he said slowly it might be easier for everyone. Easier, that word again, not kinder, not fairer, just easier. I didn't say goodbye, I just hung up, right there in the middle of the grocery store under fluorescent lights and the soft hum of freezer units. I stared down at my cart like I'd forgotten what it was for. The flowers were ruined, crushed at the stems, just like me. I didn't tell Jenna until the next day. She was crashing on my couch for the weekend, while her apartment got fumigated, one of the few people who knew me well enough to notice when something was wrong without having to ask twice. She walked in from the shower wrapped in a towel, saw me sitting cross-legged on the floor with a mug of tea, and froze. "Oh no. Who died?" "No one," I muttered, staring at the steam curling upward. "Just me. Again." I told her everything, and when I was done she didn't say I'm sorry. She didn't say they didn't mean it like that. She said, "Then don't go. For once in your life, Evelyn, don't go." I shook my head. "But it's her birthday. Her birthday. The same woman who hasn't asked how your company's doing in 5 years. The one who asked you to bring napkins last Christmas while Madison got a speech. That birthday, I stayed quiet." Jenna sat beside me, towel still wrapped hair dripping, her voice softer now. You keep waiting for them to choose you, to see you, but maybe, just maybe, they already have. I blinked, startled. They chose, she said again, and it wasn't you. That night I lay in bed, eyes wide open, listening to the soft city noise beyond my window. Car tires on wet asphalt, the low hum of a distant train. I thought about all the birthdays I'd shown up for balloons and the trunk flowers in hand, quietly arranging the chairs, while they fawned over Madison's latest +1. I thought about every polite smile, every swallowed comment, every moment I made myself small, to keep the peace. And this time, they didn't forget me. They erased me, on purpose, and for the first time, I believed them. I believed that maybe, just maybe, it had never been about misunderstanding me. Maybe they understood me perfectly. They just didn't want what they saw. I didn't cry. Not when I hung up the phone. Not when I sat on the floor of my apartment staring at a bouquet of crumpled flowers. Not even when I told Jenna the whole story. Voice flat, breath shallow, like I was reading someone else's life out loud. But I did stop breathing for just a second when his words came back to me. You're too much, Evelyn. You intimidate people. That was it. That was the final chord. Not you work too hard, or you're always busy, but you intimidate people, as if being intelligent, driven, direct, had somehow made me uninvitable, unlovable, unnecessary. That night I took a shower with the lights off. I don't know why. Maybe because the glow of the city lights outside the bathroom window was just enough. And somehow I didn't want to see myself clearly in the mirror. Not like this. Not while I was unraveling. I stood there, eyes closed, water-hot arms folded across my chest, like armor I didn't realize I needed, and I felt small. Not because I was weak, but because I'd spent years trying to grow tall in a house where love had a ceiling. At 11:42 p.m., I walked out of my bedroom barefoot, wrapped in a robe. The apartment was silent except for the low buzz of the fridge and the city humming through the windows. I sat down at my desk, pulled the laptop open, clicked into my online banking app. One by one, I opened each account: Puget Power, Cascade Utilities, Comcast. The numbers blurred for a moment, the list of auto payments, the scheduled drafts, the quiet withdrawals I never once mentioned. 6 years ago, when Dad lost his job, I offered to help for a little while. 3 years ago, Mom had her minor surgery, and they needed new medication. I quietly added another line item to the monthly support. I never stopped. They never asked. And somehow they never thanked me either. The monthly total hovered around $950 more when winter came and the gas bills spiked. I clicked cancel on the first service. A confirmation popped up: auto payment successfully deactivated. Click, water canceled. Click, internet canceled. Click, TV canceled. It wasn't rage. It wasn't revenge. It was relief, the kind of hollow exhale you let out when you've been carrying something for so long you forgot it wasn't even yours to carry. I stared at the screen, still glowing softly in the dark. I had been paying for a house I was no longer welcome in. The next morning, Jenna noticed the difference immediately. We were at our usual brunch spot 2 blocks from my apartment. She sat across from me in her oversized hoodie, sipping iced coffee and squinting like she was trying to find the answer on my face. You canceled it, didn't you? I nodded once, quiet. Her lips parted halfway between pride and disbelief. You really did it, she whispered. Holy crap, Evelyn. I stirred my coffee. You know, she said, you don't have to feel guilty, not even a little. They took from you without ever asking if you had anything left. I looked out the window. Seattle's spring sky was gray, that kind of moody overcast that makes the city feel like it's holding its breath. I don't feel guilty, I said. She blinked. No, I feel free. That afternoon, I opened a spreadsheet I hadn't looked at in almost a year, a quiet little document titled Family Expenses. I had itemized everything: bills, paid repairs, covered unexpected costs from surprise emergencies that always ended in, "Can you help?" The total at the bottom made my throat tighten. $16,284.72, nearly $17,000. That's what I'd given in the dark, quietly, without applause. And now I wasn't even allowed to show up for cake. Around 6 p.m. my phone buzzed. A text from Madison. Heard you're not coming. Probably for the best. Don't want things to feel awkward. No emojis, no warmth, just efficient dismissal, like I was an event that had been overbooked. I stared at the screen for a long moment, then typed, "You never had to ask me not to come. You just had to show me I wasn't welcome. I didn't send it. I deleted it, not because I changed my mind, but because I realized something. They weren't listening. They never were." At 10:13 p.m., I lit a candle by my window, a small one lavender-scented in a jar I bought on impulse from a woman at the Pike Place Market. She'd said it was for letting go. I watched the flame flicker, casting soft shadows against the wall, and I whispered, not to anyone in particular, just to the part of me that still wanted to be chosen. "You're not too much. You were just in the wrong house." There's a quiet kind of betrayal, the kind that doesn't scream, doesn't throw plates, doesn't slam doors. It just collects, line by line, dollar by dollar, until one day you wake up and realize you've been paying rent in a home where love was never yours to own. I didn't become the family's safety net overnight. It was subtle, gradual. At first it almost felt noble. I was 26 when it started, just a few years out of grad school working crazy hours at a research firm downtown. My apartment was tiny, but my paycheck was finally steady. I remember getting a call from Mom late one Friday. She sounded tired, slurred almost. I thought maybe she'd had a drink until she said I fell. "In the garage, sweetie. I think my ankle's broken." I jumped in the car, drove 4 hours that night, checked her into urgent care myself, waited in plastic chairs that squeaked every time I shifted, filled out the forms, watched the nurse cut off her sock with kitchen scissors. Dad never made it. He said traffic was bad. He said he'd see her in the morning. When they handed me the bill, I didn't hesitate. It wasn't cheap, but it was Mom. No one reimbursed me. No one even brought it up again. Not until 2 weeks later when Dad casually mentioned, "Glad you had some savings built up." Madison's still struggling to cover rent since the school cut her hours. That was the first deposit on my invisible account, but it wasn't the last. The next one came a year later. Dad's old Ford truck finally gave out on the highway. He called me, voice heavy with annoyance. "I swear they don't build 'em like they used to," he muttered. "What happened?" I asked. "Engines shot. Not worth fixing." I paused. "Do you need help finding a used one?" Another pause longer this time. He exhaled. "I hate asking, but if you could front something just to get us through." He didn't hate asking. He hated acknowledging it. I wired him $4,000 that same day. No repayment plan, no discussion. 1 week later, Mom texted me a photo of him smiling behind the wheel of a newer Toyota Tacoma. The caption read, "Back on the road thanks to Madison's help." I stared at the screen for a long time. Then I turned off my phone. Then there was Madison's condo. God, the condo. She had found the one a 2-bedroom in a new build just outside Spokane. Hardwood floors, walk-in closet, quartz countertops. She was in love with it. But the bank wasn't. Her credit wasn't great, her savings were low, and she called me not crying, just desperate. "I don't want to lose this place, Evelyn. It's the first thing I've ever wanted for myself." She asked if I could co-sign the mortgage. I said no. She asked again, this time softer, quieter. I didn't co-sign, but I sent her $10,000 for the down payment, and I didn't tell anyone. These things, they didn't feel like sacrifices when I did them. They felt like love, not the kind you get, but the kind you give when no one else can. But somewhere along the way, that love turned into a contract. One I never signed, but somehow was always obligated to fulfill. And when I finally tallied it all last week, when I sat at my desk and opened that spreadsheet, fingers trembling, the total stared back like a stranger. I should have seen coming $16,284.7217,000. Vanished silently, without a single thank you. Without a single, "Are you okay?" Jenna called that night just to check in. She always knows when something's off. It's a weird friend telepathy thing, I guess. "You sound off," she said, chewing into the phone. I could hear the crinkle of takeout containers in the background. Want me to bring you soup or wine? Neither, I whispered. Wait, both. I smiled faint, half-hearted. I'm fine. Just tired. Don't lie to me, she said softly. You only say just tired when your soul is screaming. I stared at the screen at the transaction history. I was their emergency contact, I said suddenly. Jenna paused. What in this family? I wasn't the daughter. They already had one. I was the emergency contact. Her breath caught. Evelyn, I cut her off. I don't mean it in a dramatic way. I realized today. I was the one they called when something broke, when someone needed a ride, when bills needed covering. I wasn't who they came to celebrate, just who they came to survive. The silence on the line wasn't awkward. It was heavy, weighted. She didn't argue. She didn't soften it. She just said the one thing I didn't know I needed to hear. Then it's time to stop answering the phone. Later that night, I sat in my window seat, knees tucked to my chest, a mug of lukewarm tea in my hand. Seattle was glowing in the distance, little pinpricks of light reflecting on wet concrete, and I whispered it again, softer this time. I wasn't the daughter. I was the backup plan, and maybe it was time to finally retire from that role. March 18th. It was a Saturday, cool, overcast, a little windier than usual for spring in Seattle. I remember watching the gray sky press low over the city like a hand, heavy, distant, and quiet. I didn't have plans. I didn't make any. I knew exactly what day it was, and for the first time in my adult life, I didn't send flowers, I didn't call, I didn't post a generic photo with a caption that said, "Happy birthday, Mom." I just stayed still. By 4:30 p.m., I had steeped a fresh cup of peppermint tea, my favorite, when I needed to breathe without feeling. I sat by the window in my apartment, legs curled beneath me, the soft hum of a piano playlist barely audible beneath the patter of light rain on glass. Somewhere 4 hours east, the guests would be arriving soon. Madison would be arranging the dessert table, no doubt lemon tart carrot cake the works. Mom would be fluffing her hair in the hallway mirror. Dad, probably adjusting the thermostat, checking the roast. They had what they wanted, a clean, quiet birthday. No awkward energy, no difficult daughter, no me. And then, at exactly 6:01 p.m., my phone buzzed. Once, then again, 6:01 p.m., Mom, sweetie, the house lost power. Can you call someone? Maybe the company. 6:03 p.m., Dad. No lights, no water, internet's out too. Do you know what's going on? 6:05 p.m., Madison guests are arriving. Don't sabotage this. I stared at the screen, unmoved. Not a single hi, not a single how are you, not a single acknowledgement that 3 days earlier they told me not to come. They didn't care if I was okay. They just needed the lights back on. I didn't respond. Instead, I took a slow sip of tea, the steam warming my face, my fingers cradling the mug like a memory I didn't want to forget. My apartment was quiet, peaceful. I watched the city breathe neon signs flickering on buses sighing to a stop on the street below, and somewhere out in Spokane, their house had gone dark, literally. I could picture it all too easily. Mom lighting the emergency candles she keeps in the dining room drawer. Dad fiddling with the fuse box, muttering under his breath. Madison pacing by the window, arms crossed, voice hissing over her phone. Maybe they'd blame a storm. Maybe they'd blame a faulty grid. But eventually, inevitably, someone would open that email. The one from the utility company, service suspended, payment overdue. They'd scroll back. They'd notice. Autopay canceled, account locked. Responsibility returned to its rightful owners. At 6:17 p.m., another text. Madison, you're doing this to get back at us. You're petty, Evelyn. Grow up. I set the phone face down, not out of spite, not out of guilt, but because I'd finally realized something bone deep echoing in my ribs. I wasn't responsible for their comfort anymore, not when they were never concerned with mine. Jenna showed up around 7 carrying Thai takeout, and that one look she always gives me when she knows something's up, half concerned, half ready to torch the world in my honor. She didn't ask. She just handed me a box of Pad C UW, plopped down on the couch, and turned on the TV. Do you want to talk about it? She asked after a while, not looking at me. I shook my head. Not really. She nodded, took a bite. Then whatever it is, you did the right thing. I really looked at her and said, they didn't invite me, but they still expected me to pay for the lights. Her expression shifted, softening then hardening again. Wow, she whispered. They want your money, but not your presence. No, I said quietly, they want my usefulness, not my existence. Later that night, I lit the lavender candle again. The same one from last week. The same one I told myself I'd only light when something sacred needed releasing. The flame caught quick flickered gold against the shadows, and I whispered to no one. They only called when something broke, not when I did. The room stayed still, safe, whole. I didn't answer another message that night. I let the dark speak for itself, and this time, I didn't feel cruel. I felt free. Monday hit like a wave strong cold and unrelenting. Seattle rain had returned with its signature mood, a gray sheet of mist hanging just above the pavement, soft enough to ignore, wet enough to matter. I walked to the office like I always did, earbuds and black coat zipped to my chin, coffee burning through the paper cup in my palm. By all appearances, everything was normal, but I wasn't. Not anymore. I arrived at Neural Wave's glass doors just before 8:00 a.m., nodding to Darren at the front desk, his Monday expression already buried in email. "Morning, Evelyn." "Morning," I said, scanning my badge. I passed the digital board in the lobby, where our quarterly goals blinked in soft white light. Pushing AI to predict, to prevent, to protect. Yeah, that sounded nice on a wall. In the elevator, I checked my schedule: 3 meetings, 2 internal reviews, and an inbox overflowing with post-funding noise. But one subject line stood out. Internal transfer request approved, Nathan Whitmore, SF office, Seattle HQ. For a moment, the world slowed. I opened the email. My thumb hovered, just long enough to confirm the name. Position head of finance. Reporting to Evelyn Carter. Start date March 20th. Today? I didn't react. Not externally. But something inside me, something buried under years of silence and swallowed words, tilted, just slightly. Madison's boyfriend, working for me. I scrolled down the profile. The attached resume was polished, curated MBA from NYU, 5 years at a fintech firm, 2 years with us in San Francisco. The photo was professional, crisp, navy suit, clean jawline, faint smile. The kind of man my parents would beam about at dinner. The kind of man they cleared space for at birthdays. I closed the email, slow, precise, and sat at my desk. I didn't plan this, but maybe life just tipped the scale back a little. Around 9:30, I passed Sasha in the hallway, our operations lead. "Hey," she whispered, eyes widening slightly. "I think your new finance guy just arrived." "Already?" "Yeah, he's in onboarding with HR, super polite. Cute too." I gave her a small smile. "Good to know." She leaned in conspiratorially. "Rumor is he transferred from SF for personal reasons. Some fiancé or something. You know him." I paused just long enough. "We've crossed paths," I said softly, turning toward the conference room. Inside, I sat through a project sync while barely hearing a word. All I could think about was the look on his face when he saw mine. Not because I wanted revenge, not because I wanted to gloat, but because I knew the man my family had tried so hard to impress was about to report to the one person they'd tried so hard to erase. At 10:46 a.m., a soft knock tapped against my office door. I looked up, and there he was, Nathan Whitmore. Same suit, same smile, but not as confident now. His eyes flicked from my nameplate, to my face, to something else, recognition, confusion. A flicker of discomfort. "Evelyn Carter," he asked, voice slightly unsteady. I stood. "Hi, Nathan," I said calmly. "Welcome to Seattle." He blinked. "You're—" "Yes," I said. "I'll be reviewing your Q2 roadmap and overseeing all financial approvals." Silence. Just long enough for him to swallow his surprise. I gestured to the chair across from my desk. "Please have a seat. Let's get started." He didn't say hi. He didn't say I didn't know. He didn't say anything. He sat down quiet and opened his folder. But I noticed his hands, just barely trembling. As he walked me through his onboarding brief, I stayed steady, cool, professional, every response measured, every question deliberate. I didn't mention Madison. I didn't mention the birthday. I didn't mention the texts they'd sent, frantic, rude, and titled, because I didn't need to. The silence said everything. When the meeting ended, he stood up slowly. "Thanks for your time," he said, voice tight. I nodded. "Looking forward to seeing your work." He left, and as the door clicked softly behind him, I turned back to my desk and smiled. Not out of spite, not even satisfaction, just stillness, like the world had taken one step closer to balance. That night, I got home late. I poured a glass of wine, stood by the window again, and watched the city glitter in the dark. And for the first time, in a long time, I didn't feel erased. I didn't feel overlooked. I didn't feel like the background blur in someone else's story. I felt like the headline. And whether Nathan liked it or not, so did he. It was Tuesday, 8:57 a.m. The office was quiet, still shaking off the grogginess of another gray Seattle morning. The kind where your second cup of coffee doesn't feel optional and the city's heartbeat hasn't quite kicked in yet. I was reviewing a proposal from our machine learning team, something about dynamic model reconfiguration, nothing groundbreaking, when I heard the knock. 2 short raps, polite practiced. I glanced at my calendar. No meetings scheduled until 10. "Come in," I said, not looking up. The door opened. And then silence. The kind of silence that hums. The kind of silence that hangs in the air like a breath not taken. And then I heard it low, cautious, tight. "Evelyn." I looked up, and there he was standing exactly where I knew he would eventually stand, but looking exactly like someone who hadn't seen this version of me before. Nathan Whitmore. His blazer was crisp charcoal gray. The collar of his button-down pressed so perfectly I wondered if he ironed it himself. His hair was neat, calculated like the kind of man who keeps lint rollers in his glove compartment. But his eyes were trying to make sense of what his mouth couldn't yet say. I stood slow steady and offered a small professional smile. "Welcome to Neuralwave," I said, even poised. "I look forward to your performance." He didn't move, didn't blink, just stood there like someone who had finally spotted the twist in the movie. 20 minutes too late. I wasn't Madison's weird little sister anymore. I was his boss. And the look on his face, it was priceless. He stepped into the room almost reluctantly and closed the door behind him. His eyes swept across the office, the sleek bookshelves, the digital planning board, the awards on the far wall. His mouth opened slightly as if a question were about to fall out, but nothing came. Not at first. Finally he said it soft, almost disbelieving. "I didn't know. You worked here." I let that hang in the air for a beat. And then, with the kind of calm that can only come from surviving years of being underestimated, I replied, "I don't work here, Nathan. I co-founded it." He blinked. Once. Twice. And I watched him process it, not just the title, not just the role, but the weight of the realization. Everything he thought he knew was wrong. He cleared his throat. "I had no idea. I mean, Madison said you were in tech," but she didn't know I said, cutting gently. No one asked. He looked away just for a second, then back at me, nodding. "Well, I'm honored to be here." That part sounded rehearsed, like something he practiced in the elevator. But I gave him credit for not running. "Have a seat," I said, gesturing to the chair across from mine. "Let's walk through the Q2 numbers." We spent the next 35 minutes discussing budget forecasts, team allocations, and vendor negotiations. He spoke well, confident, clear, practiced. His background in finance showed, but his energy shifted. He was measured, careful. I watched it happen in real time, the recalibration. The moment he realized he wasn't in the room with someone's younger sister, he was in the room with the woman who signed his evaluations. At the end of the meeting, I stood. He mirrored me slower than before, still processing, still uncertain. "Thanks for your time," he said. "Of course." He lingered. Just a second longer, and then quietly, awkwardly, he said it. Madison never mentioned any of this. I tilted my head. She wouldn't. Another beat. He nodded almost like a bow, a silent, stunned exit, and left. I sat down slowly, folded my hands in my lap, let the silence settle again. And I waited for the emotion to come, the adrenaline, the vindication, the satisfaction. but it didn't. I didn't feel anything. Not pride, not joy, not vengeance, just stillness. Like the part of me that had once begged to be seen had finally stopped trying. Jenna texted me later that afternoon. "Jenna, how'd it go with Prince Polished?" I replied with one line. He called me boss. She didn't respond with a joke. She didn't even send a meme. Just 3 words. Damn right, Evelyn. That night I walked home alone, hands deep in my coat pockets, wind soft against my cheeks. And as the city glowed around me, I realized something. For the first time in my life, I didn't need to prove anything, because the truth had walked into my office and spoken for itself. It started with a ding, then another, then 6 more in under 30 seconds. I was still at my desk, the office emptying around me, when the vibrations started buzzing against the wood like a swarm. I glanced at the screen. Family group chat 14, unread messages. I stared at it. Didn't move. Didn't even unlock it. Not yet. I knew exactly what this was, and I wasn't about to let them pull me into panic mode, not this time. I let the phone buzz itself into silence. It was almost an hour later, after I'd wrapped up a call with our UX lead and finally stepped outside into the sharp bite of evening air, that I opened it, one by one, line by line, each message more frantic than the last. "Mom, Evelyn, what happened?" Nathan said. "You're his boss." "Dad, is that true? Why didn't you ever say anything about this company, Madison? Are you serious right now? You knew this and didn't say a word." "Mom, Evelyn? How could you blindside us like that at my birthday dinner, no less?" Madison. "He walked in this morning and called you boss in front of everyone. Do you have any idea how humiliating that was for me, Dad? You could have handled this more gracefully. Your timing was unkind. Unkind. They really used that word." I stopped walking right there in the middle of the sidewalk as headlights splashed across my shoes and the world spun in its usual chaos, and I laughed. Out loud. Just once. Not from joy, not even bitterness. It was the kind of laugh you give when a car crash finally stops making noise. I took a deep breath, opened my Gmail, and started typing. Not in the group chat. They didn't deserve that kind of immediacy. They'd made me wait for years to be seen, to be heard, to be acknowledged. So they could wait for clarity too. Subject regroup chat to Mom, Dad, Madison. "Hi all, yes. What Nathan said is true. I'm the co-founder of Neuralwave. I didn't assign him here. I didn't know he was transferring until I saw the staff update. I didn't invite him. I didn't orchestrate this. I also didn't introduce myself as his boss. He did. I didn't call attention to myself. I didn't try to make a scene. Life just introduced us properly. I don't feel humiliated. I don't feel malicious. I feel like for once the truth spoke before I had to. Hope the dinner was nice. Evelyn." I hovered over the send button for maybe 3 seconds, then clicked. No dramatic finish, no revision, just send and silence. Back at home, I poured a glass of water and sat on the floor beside my couch. I didn't turn on music, didn't light the lavender candle, didn't check my phone again. I just sat, still, present, quiet, and for the first time in a long time, I wasn't racing to defend myself. I wasn't bending my truth to soften their perception. I wasn't shrinking so they could fit their version of me into a narrative that made them more comfortable. Around 10:17 p.m., another buzz. I didn't need to look, I already knew. Madison. "So this is about getting even. Great. You didn't even have the decency to tell me. You let me walk into that like an idiot." I typed, then paused. I closed the message app, reopened Gmail, subject about getting even. "Madison, I didn't let anything happen to you. You just walked into the truth. The fact that it made you uncomfortable isn't my responsibility, it's yours. Emily." Click, send, done. I stood, pulled the blinds closed, turned off the kitchen light, and whispered, "Not for them, not for anyone, just for me." For once I didn't need to say anything. The truth said it for me. It was a Sunday afternoon. Clouds hung low like tired thoughts. Seattle air crisp, quiet, heavy with the weight of something coming. The kind of day that dares you to stay soft and reminds you what happens when you don't. I was barefoot sipping lemon tea in an old hoodie, reviewing quarterly projections from our R&D team when I heard it 3 knocks. Firm, familiar, not Jenna, Not a neighbor, not delivery. No, it was the knock of people who don't believe they need an invitation. I opened the door, and there they were, my parents. My mom was holding a reusable grocery tote, the kind she brings to Sunday markets. My dad, arms crossed, face unreadable, stood a half step behind her, like a shadow, waiting for a cue. Neither of them smiled. Neither of them apologized. They just stood there. Like this was normal. Like we hadn't gone weeks without speaking. Like I hadn't just detonated the image of their perfect family in a single workday. "Hi, honey." My mom said, her voice too soft, too polished, like she was reading it from a script. I didn't speak. We were in the area. She continued holding the bag a little tighter and thought we might talk for a bit. I stepped aside. No hugs, no how have you beens, just silence stretching from the doorway to the living room like a taut wire no one wanted to trip. They sat on the couch. I didn't. I stayed standing. In the kitchen, between the island and the wall, a safe zone emotionally and otherwise. Mom reached into the bag and pulled out a thin manila folder, the kind realtors use for home closings or insurance agents use when they want to look like they've thought things through. She laid it gently on the coffee table like it was a peace offering. "We've been thinking," she said, voice still sweet, too sweet, "about everything." I said nothing. She opened the folder, inside a spreadsheet, printed, highlighted, color-coded. That's when I knew this wasn't reconciliation. This was accounting. "There's just been so much tension lately," Mom said softly, "and we realize we haven't been very fair to you." My eyes narrowed, not in anger, just confusion. Dad jumped in. "What your mom's saying is you're in a stable position now, and we're not asking for much, but we were hoping you might help out." I stepped forward, picked up the sheet, and scanned it. Rent, utilities, cable, medication, groceries, a vague line labeled retirement buffer, the monthly total $1,800. My hands didn't shake, my voice didn't crack. I just asked one question: will Madison be contributing? Mom flinched just slightly. Her eyes darted toward Dad, then down, then back up. "She's going through a lot right now." I raised an eyebrow. "She's emotionally unstable," she added quickly. "The breakup, the stress, you understand." I folded the sheet, neatly, calmly, and laid it back on the table. "Here are my terms," I said. Dad straightened, his jaw clenched. "I'll contribute half, $900 a month. Madison will contribute the other half. We'll sign a legal agreement notarized. Upon your passing, all assets, including the house, will be transferred to me." Silence. Heavy, dense, explosive. Then Dad stood up so fast the couch creaked. His face turned red. Hand slammed the table. Water glasses jumped. "You're putting your family on paper now." I didn't flinch. I just looked him in the eye and said, "If love only exists when I pay, then it was never love. It was a subscription." He stared at me stunned, like I'd just broken something sacred. But nothing sacred had existed between us for years, just a balance sheet, and my name at the bottom. Mom's voice wavered. "Maybe we should talk it over?" But he was already gathering himself, already walking toward the door. I followed. No one said goodbye. No one looked back. When I closed the door behind them, the silence felt like a decision I'd finally made. I walked to the sink, poured out the rest of my tea, stood still, and breathed. Not relief, not sadness, just truth. And this time I didn't need them to understand it. I just needed to live in it. The email came on a Thursday morning. It was quiet in the office, that midweek hush, where keyboards click like whispers and coffee cools too fast in paper cups. I wasn't expecting anything, not from him, but there it was. From Nathan Whitmore's subject, "Thank you," I clicked. Evelyn. "I wanted to let you know that I've ended things with Madison. I know this may not be my place, but I wanted to say thank you for the way you handled everything with grace, for not exposing me, or her, or any of it. You showed restraint I didn't expect, and that I probably didn't deserve. This week has made a few things clear to me. I'm ashamed not because of what you are, but because I never took the time to find out. Thank you again, Nathan." I read it twice, not because I didn't believe it, but because I wasn't sure how I felt. It wasn't relief, It wasn't pride, it wasn't even justice, it was clarity. I stared at the words I've ended things with Madison. Not a question, not a maybe, not a hesitation, just a line, drawn, and suddenly I understood something I hadn't until that moment. I didn't break their relationship. I didn't sabotage anything. I just stopped fixing what was already cracked. By 3:00 p.m., the first text came in. Madison, can we talk? I need to understand what's going on. I didn't answer. At 4:16 p.m., Madison, he won't answer me. I know you two have been working together. Please just tell him he's overreacting. Still, I said nothing. At 6:09 p.m., Madison, this is all because of you. You knew he'd find out. You let it happen right in front of me. And finally at 7:03 p.m., Madison, please, Emily, just talk to him. Help me fix this. I stood at the window, phone in hand, city lights flickering through the soft gray fog outside. Another night in Seattle, cold, quiet, honest. And I finally typed my reply. Evelyn. He didn't leave because of what I said. He left because of what he saw. I hit send. Simple, final, true. No follow-up came, no apology, no breakthrough moment where she admitted what we both knew had been buried for years. Instead, silence. But for once, it didn't sting. That night I made chamomile tea and curled into my window seat, the one Jenna called your fortress. I watched the street below, people in coats, neon umbrellas, bus headlights slicing through puddles, and I whispered out loud, to the version of me who once would have begged to be heard. I never sought revenge. I just stopped pretending everything was okay. The difference was everything. Monday came, like it always does. Cold gray, unbothered by what broke over the weekend. I arrived at the office at 7:52 a.m., 2 minutes ahead of routine. The lobby smelled like fresh carpet cleaner and burnt espresso from the cafe downstairs. Same elevator, same glass doors, same login screen on my laptop, flashing in soft blue light. To anyone watching it was just another start to another week. But I knew better. Something in the air had shifted. Inside me, something had stopped bending. I opened my inbox, 37 unread emails, a dozen from partners, one flagged from legal, and one from Madison, sent at 12:14 a.m. subject line, please, Evelyn. I hovered, paused, then opened it. Evelyn, I'll change this time, I swear. Just please talk to him. Help me get him back. Please, just one more chance. You're the only one who can fix this. Madison, fix. There it was again, that word soft and sharp, always delivered like a compliment, but wrapped around a command. I closed the email without replying, didn't archive it, didn't delete it, just left it open. A window to the past I no longer lived in. Later that morning I walked the floor, checking in with department leads, greeting the newer hires by name. I passed Nathan in the analytics wing. He glanced up from his screen. Our eyes met for maybe half a second. He nodded firm, respectful. No awkward smile, no hesitation, just a man acknowledging his superior. I nodded back, nothing more. We've never spoken about the birthday. We didn't need to, because real recognition doesn't need explanation, and truth doesn't need a second round. At 11:30 a.m. during our team sync, Nathan presented the Q2 financial outlook. His slides were tight, his numbers clean, projections clear, answers crisp, and as I watched him speak confidently, calmly, like he belonged in that room, I didn't feel power. I felt peace. There was no fear in his tone, just recognition of what I was, of what they never saw, of what Madison had never mentioned, not because she didn't know, but because it didn't fit the story. By 5:45 p.m., the office had emptied out. Rain dripped steadily against the windows, and I stayed behind to review partner contracts. That's when my phone buzzed. Voicemail. I didn't recognize the number until I heard her voice. Hi, sweetie. It's me. It's been hard around here. A pause. Madison's not eating much. She barely speaks. And your dad? He's not himself. Another pause longer. I'm not calling about money. We don't need anything. Maybe you could visit. You don't have to bring anything. Just your voice. Click. End of message. I stared at the screen for a moment, the blinking dot beneath her words, like it was waiting for me to save something. I didn't. I tapped delete, then set the phone down. They wanted my presence now when it could ease their guilt. But not when I stood outside the very door they closed in my face, not when I was silent and hurting, not when I needed anything. They never asked about the day I broke, only when it was convenient to take me back together. But I wasn't glass anymore. I wasn't a crack waiting to be filled. I walked to the window, pulled the blinds halfway, and looked out. Seattle shimmered beneath the mist, all lights and reflections blinking through layers of fog, and I whispered, "Silence isn't cruelty. Sometimes it's healing. Not every goodbye needs an explosion. Some are slow fades, some are just boundaries, and this one finally was mine." Weeks passed, no fireworks, no closure monologues, just stillness, a strange kind of calm, the kind that settles in after a storm where the air smells like clarity and things finally feel still enough to rebuild. I no longer checked the family group chat. In fact, I forgot it existed. Their words used to pull me in like a current guilt-need obligation, dragging me toward conversations I never agreed to have. But now the silence didn't feel cold. It felt earned. At my desk, the framed photo of my family, the one we took at Madison's graduation, was gone. In its place, a printed image of our company's first working prototype, a slim, palm-sized device with neural-coded sensors and real-time cardiac tracking, something we built from scratch, from caffeine doubt, and the kind of persistence that doesn't need praise to keep going. It was a symbol, not of revenge, but of becoming. That Friday at our company's monthly happy hour, the team gathered at a rooftop bar downtown. The sky was streaked with gold and ash, the city glowing like it finally saw me. Drinks in hand, laughter floating between bites of overpriced appetizers, our operations lead. Sasha stood on a chair, raising her glass. To Evelyn, she called out her voice, bright, proud, certain. The reason this company exists. The group erupted into cheers, glasses clinking, arms reaching. And me, I didn't wave it off. Didn't brush it aside. Didn't say it was a team effort. I just smiled, not out of pride, but peace. For the first time in years, I accepted the truth of who I was without flinching. 2 days later, a quiet Sunday afternoon, I wandered into a bookstore tucked beneath a flower shop on Pine Street. It smelled like cedar and paper. I moved slowly, fingertips brushing spines like memories, until I landed on a worn copy of The Gifts of Imperfection. I smiled, gently. Old me would have bought it, desperate for permission to feel whole. This version just held it, then put it back. As I walked toward the register with a small poetry collection, instead my phone buzzed. A new message. From my father. "Dad, we're clearing out some space. Let us know if you want anything from the house. No hi, no hope you're well, just logistics, like I was a former tenant." I stared at the screen and quietly turned it off. What I wanted? You already threw out the night you said I made the family look bad. Back home, the sun was sinking behind the skyline, casting long golden streaks across my kitchen floor. I sat at the table, opened my journal, and wrote. For years I thought keeping quiet meant keeping the peace, but peace is not silence. Peace is when you stop begging people to see your worth, when you stop twisting yourself into shapes that fit other people's comfort. Peace is when you become whole alone if you have to. I took a sip of coffee, let it settle warm and steady, then added the last line, the one I had waited my entire life to understand. I didn't leave the family. I just stopped auditioning for a role I was never going to get. The pen clicked closed. The chapter ended. And this time, I was the one who wrote the final line. You know, for the longest time, I thought that being quiet meant being kind, that if I kept showing up, kept helping, kept proving I was good enough, they'd eventually see me. But the truth is, some people only love the version of you that serves them. And the day you stop fixing what they keep breaking, that's the day you start choosing yourself. I didn't set out to be distant. I just stopped bleeding for people who never brought bandages. So maybe the real question is this. When does protecting your peace stop being selfish and start being necessary? Tell me, have you ever felt like the invisible one in your own family? The problem solver, not the person. How did you find your voice? Or are you still searching for it? If this story made you feel something, leave a comment. If you've got a different perspective, I want to hear it. And if stories like this speak to your soul, don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss what's coming next. I'm Evelyn Carter, and thank you for listening.